The Geet Ruler Episode Number 103 Explanation. Alone? Hearing Mu Chen's words, the faces of Xu Huang and the rest changed. The Academy Alliance had the advantage in numbers that could even be seen outside. With their advantage in numbers, even Mu Chen would have to hide, not to mention that the region was under the sealing spiritual array. Losing the power of spiritual energy, even something that had went through the spiritual energy disaster or spirit disaster would suffer a great drawback in strength. No, Luo Li's brows frowned as she held onto her Luo God sword. I will go with you. Although my physique isn't as strong as your own, it is much stronger compared to a normal person's. Clearly, Luo Li wasn't too assured to let Mu Chen enter the region that had sealed spiritual energy all alone by himself. Me and Luo Li will go in with you. Otherwise, our efforts would have been in vain if you were to take all the sovereign spiritual liquid for yourself. Wen Qingxian said softly. Mu Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he was helpless towards Wen Qingxuan's pride. When Mu Chen saw the expression of the two girls, he knew that it was impossible for him to convince the two of them. Luo Li wasn't assured to let him go alone and, clearly, Wen Qingxian was haunted by her pride. She could not watch as she gains the benefits by relying on Mu Chen. Therefore, she would definitely not allow Mu Chen to take the risk alone and split the harvest thereafter. However, Mu Chen had to admit that Wen Qingxuan's pride truly was something admirable. Then, the three of us will go in and try our luck. Mu Chen did not waste any more time to convince them. Perhaps the three of them were a little weak, but they were not ordinary people. He believed that despite the fact that the Academy Alliance had the advantage in numbers, with them being able to come and go as they wished, it should still be possible. Seeing as Mu Chen agreed to her suggestion, only then did Luo Li smile. You guys will wait for us out here, Mu Chen said as he glanced towards Xu Huang, Pinna, Le. The three of them nodded. Although they did not wish for Mu Chen to take the risk, they might not be able to help them or they might even be their burden if they were to follow. Pinna, Le, and Wei looked at Wen Qingxian. Seeing as the latter had nodded her head, only then did they agree to it. Let's go. The Academy Alliance actually wants to monopolize the hidden spiritual courtyard with their numbers. Mu Chen looked at the pitch-black forest as a chill flashed across his pupils. He did not have any positive opinion of the Academy Alliance. Therefore, he was not willing to let them have the hidden spiritual courtyard. He waved his hand and jumped down the mountain peak, then appeared before the pitch-black forest. The forest was so black that it was emitting faint chill that could be felt on the skin. Mu Chen's foot touched the ground as his figure charged in without any hesitation. When he charged in, he could feel that the spiritual energy within his body abruptly stopped, as if it had been frozen. Mu Chen's expression was grave. He tried to move his intent, but there was no response from his spiritual energy. The faint spiritual light on his body dulled down. The boundless energy that could shatter mountains with a fist also disappeared. It felt as if he had been suddenly weakened. The feeling was hard to bear. Indeed worthy of being a sealing spiritual array. Mu Chen muttered as he furrowed his brows. Behind him, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian closely followed. They both had grave expressions hung on their faces as well. Clearly, they also felt the changes in their body. In this area, the usage of spiritual energy was lost. Doesn't it feel familiar? Mu Chen slowly clenched his fist as he smiled towards Luo Li and Wen Qingxian. Luo Li lightly smiled in response as reminiscence surged within her clear pupils. The feeling here was indeed similar to the spiritual road. At that time, they could not use any spiritual energy and could only rely on genuine methods. Perhaps she was thinking of the life-and-death battle that she had with Mu Chen as her gaze that was staring at Mu Chen gradually turned gentle. Those methods could be used now. Mu Chen retrieved a black robe that he passed to Luo Li. The black robe was similar to the surroundings as it had the effect of hiding one's figure. Perhaps this method did not have the slightest usage when they were outside, but it was useful to this region that had lost the usage of spiritual energy and vision became the main method of scouting. Luo Li took the black robe and wore it. Instantly, her fine figure was covered by the black robe, only her exquisite face was revealed. Here. Mu Chen passed another black robe towards Wen Qingxian. It's ugly, Wen Qingxian said in hesitation. She had quite a bit of misophobia and thus, she did not have much contact with the opposite sex. Not to mention the robe that was given to her by Mu Chen, God knows if he had worn them before. "You're too eye-catching." Mu Chen took a glance at the girl before him. Her yellow battle armor wrapped onto her graceful figure and her curves could be seen. This scene alone could make many people stare in blankness, not to mention at this monotonous area. When Qingxian seemed to have noticed Mu Chen's looks and instantly glared at him. She snatched the black robe and wore it over. She was, after all, not a reckless person. She would not bring unnecessary trouble for her companions just because of her own preferences. Mu Chen smiled as he took out another black robe and wore it over his clothes. Thereafter, he waved his hand as he turned around and charged into the pitch-black forest with the two girls closely following him. Within the pitch-black forest, light rays were extremely dull. The spike trees had expanding branches that seemed like blades as they drew sinister-looking shadows. They were like the figures of demons as they wiggled to the point that could make one's hair stand on end. Rustle. Under the shadows, 3 figures flashed across at high speed, using the shadows to cover themselves. The 3 of them were well-known figures in the spiritual road. The environment that they had been through was more ferocious compared to this place. Therefore, they were very skillful as they stealthily moved. They were skillfully using the cover of shadows to hide their figures. At the same time, their gazes were as sharp as an eagle's as they swept through the dark places. As their figures moved, Mu Chen's gaze suddenly flickered as he hid his figure behind a spike. When his advancing steps stopped, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian hid themselves towards the left and right at the same time. Mu Chen's line of sight passed through the spike as he glanced towards the darkness not far away. The shadows were a little distorted as a chilling light flickered in the darkness. Those were the luster of blades. 6 people. Mu Chen said softly as he discovered the 6 figures in the darkness. Those 6 people had concealed themselves well. However, they had forgotten to hide the cold luster of their blades. Mu Chen extended his hand and made a signal. Seeing his hand signal, Luo Li shot forth from the right. She and Mu Chen already had extremely high rapport back in the spiritual road. She could understand every single hand signal that Mu Chen used. Wen Qingxian, however, was a step slower. But she was, after all, more intelligent compared to others and very quickly, she understood the meaning in Mu Chen's actions and shot forth from the left. Seeing as the 2 girls had taken action, Mu Chen tapped his foot as he appeared like a spiritual monkey, flying up the tree that was filled with spikes. In the darkness not far away, there were 6 alert gazes that were constantly looking around, tightly gripping their blades and swords. They also had some experience hiding as they remained still on the ground, being covered by the shadows so that they would not be discovered by others so easily. The intersect point of their gazes sealed off this region as any movements would not be possible to avoid their monitor. Amongst the 6, the hands of one of them that was used as support against the spike tree slightly moved. He seemed to have sensed a fine movement that made him startled. A smear of suspicion flashed through his eyes, but he did not discover anything unusual. After sweeping his eyes around, he shook his head in the end as his tensed body started to relax. Just when his body was relaxed, he instantly sensed a chill surging forth. Thereafter, an intense pain came from the back of his head and his eyes darkened. His figure gradually went limp. However, just when his body was about to fall, a hand held onto his body that made him seem normal. In front of him, another companion sensed that something was wrong. That person turned his head and looked at his companion in the shadows as he spoke with a low voice, "What's wrong?" Within the darkness, he was replied with a shake of his hand and a hand was extended over. He looked at his companion's hand in suspicion. However, he did not notice anything else. However, before the suspicion in his eyes deepened, a hand traveled at lightning speed and grabbed onto his throat, causing the voice that was about to exit his throat to be pushed back down. Mu Chen walked out from the shadows as he looked at the person whose throat was grabbed by him. The person's face was red but was not able to speak a word. Mu Chen placed his finger on his lips and made a silent gesture. That person could see the chill in Mu Chen's eyes. Instantly, sweat dripped down as he trembled with fear and stopped his struggles. He believed that if he were to continue struggling, he would not be able to keep his life. When Mu Chen saw that he had obediently quietened down, he smiled. He looked towards the left and right, since there was movement from those two directions. After a brief moment later, this area retained its peace as two slender figures walked over. Settled, Luo Li said softly. Seeing as the two girls were fine without any injuries, Mu Chen nodded. He smiled with his eyes narrowed as he spoke towards the pale youth. You're from the Academy Alliance, right? Tell me how many of you entered this place. Their rough positions, as well as the position of those three fellows. Under the stretch of the spike tree shadows, Mu Chen heavily patted his palm against the back of the head of the person that had his throat held by Mu Chen, fainting him. Shortly after, he dusted his hands off as his gaze swept towards the depths of the forest. He had already obtained sufficient amount of information from the person that was held hostage by him. Judging from the news, when Mo Yu, Qin Feng, and the rest entered the Divine Wood Palace, they went for this place straight away. Clearly, this place was their target and were well prepared. They dispatched dozens of teams. Adding all the numbers, they would have nearly 200 men. Furthermore, the main thing about it was that these people weren't too outstanding in their cultivation of spiritual energy. The exception was that all these people had more or less cultivated in their physiques, which implied that their physical bodies were more powerful compared to ordinary experts. If they were all placed outside and could use their spiritual energy, even if they had the advantage in numbers, Mu Chen wouldn't fear them a little. However, under these special circumstances, it became a problem. If our news is right, Mo Yu, Qin Feng and the rest have already reached the hidden spiritual courtyard. We were a step too late. Fortunately, there is a seal outside the hidden spiritual courtyard. It would take them quite some time to break it. Mu Chen looked towards Luo Li and Wen Qingxian as he continued, they have nearly 200 people that sealed all the paths towards the hidden spiritual courtyard. If we continue to proceed, we might have to come in contact with the other party. And when it comes to that, the situation might be a little troublesome. Do you guys still want to continue forth? Luo Li and Wen Qingxian exchanged a glance as they nodded. Let's go, then. Mu Chen smiled. He had already expected this reply. With Wen Qingxuan's pride, how could she retreat? And although Luo Li seemed calm and tranquil, she too had her pride deep in her heart that was not in any way inferior to Wen Qingxian. Mu Chen turned around as his foot tapped on the ground. His figure had stuck to the shadows as he flew away. When Luo Li and Wen Qingxian saw his actions, they quickly followed up. As Mu Chen and his party left, this area became quiet once again. However, a brief moment later, there was a faint light emitting from the fainted youth's clothing, and with a buzz, it disappeared in a flash of light. At the same time, in the central area of this forest. This was an empty region with a flat ground spreading over 100 feet, covered in huge spiked trees. At the central area was an ancient hall. The ancient hall was tightly sealed with light runes faintly flickering outside the hall, sealing the hall like a prison. Outside the stone hall, there were dozens of figures. They were Mo Yu, Qin Feng, and Liu Xiong. The three leaders of the Academy Alliance were all present in this location. Mo Yu stood up front with a light disc in his hand. Above the light disc, there were rays of light that shot out. Those rays of light were extremely peculiar. When they shone on the light runes outside the stone hall, the light runes were actually dissipating bit by bit, as if snow had encountered lava. According to this speed, it should take roughly half an hour before the seal is broken. Qin Feng looked at the constantly dissipating seal as he smiled. However, when he finished speaking, his expression changed. With a wave of his hand, a streak of light shuttled through the forest and landed on his hand. It was a pitch-black unusual insect that had a small body as smooth as a mirror. Qin Feng frowned his brows as he stared at the insect. Shortly after, he lightly tapped his finger and light appeared on the mirror-like back of the insect. It was a scene that showed three figures, Mu Chen, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian. Ha ha, enemies are indeed on a narrow road. Qin Feng looked at the three figures as a cold smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Seems like these three people are indeed daring. Clearly knowing how unusual this place is and still daring to enter knowing that my Academy Alliance has the advantage in numbers. Up ahead, Mo Yu had his brows furrowed as he watched the scene and spoke with indifference. I need roughly half an hour's time. Okay, rest assured. I will not let them reach this place. Qin Feng lightly smiled as a chill surged forth in his eyes. Leave it to me. I'll teach those three a lesson. Ha ha, if I had encountered the three of them outside, I really would not dare to do anything to them. However, the heavens have aided me. Entering here, they will understand the meaning of a tiger's den. When he finished his words, he turned around and left. He waved his hand as dozens of figures flew towards the forest and closely followed him as they quickly disappeared in the shadows. From Qin Feng's actions of going all by himself with his men, it seemed that he did not place Mu Chen's party of three in his eyes. Let him go alone. Liu Xiong asked Mo Yu as he looked at the direction that Qin Feng left. Mo Yu lightly smiled as he replied, if it was outside, it would be terrible for Qin Feng to deal with any of those three. But here, the outcome might not be the same. Let him go and you stay to guard me. I can't split my attention. Okay. Liu Xiong nodded. Mo Yu made a sideways glance into the shadows far away as a smear of a sneer hung on the corner of his mouth. In a short while, Mu Chen and his group will probably get a huge fright and surprise. They will soon understand what a silly decision it was for them to intrude this place so recklessly. The three figures quickly traveled in the shadows of this forest. Mu Chen's steps suddenly stopped as he looked up ahead. He had sensed an aura from no less than 30 people. Clearly, this was the main path towards the hidden spiritual courtyard with heavy guards of the Academy Alliance. We can't sneak anymore, let's do it. Mu Chen's gaze swept to his surroundings as he spoke helplessly while shrugging his shoulders. Due to the terrain, they could no longer advance without a sound. Okay. Luo Li and Wen Qingxian nodded in acknowledgement. From the looks of it, Mu Chen no longer spoke as he slightly bent his body. His muscles tensed up as he seemed like a leopard that was about to hunt. Up ahead on the main path, there were dozens of figures spread out as they swept their alerted gazes around their surroundings. All of them had robust figures and also had faint light circulating on the surface of their bodies. Those were all signs that they had trained in the path of physiques. Standing at the front, there was a towering male. His gaze was like a ferocious tiger that swept around. Clearly, he was the leader among this group. HM? Suddenly, the expression of that towering male froze as he heard the trembling of the ground. In the next instant, he abruptly raised his head, fixing his gaze onto a direction. Sonic booms from the break of wind resounded as a figure shot out like an arrow from the darkness. Someone is intruding, stop them. That towering male barked as he stomped his foot onto the ground. The ground cracked as he raised his body a little. A powerful energy surged forth from his body. Bang! His figure was the first to charge out and clashed with the incoming figure. He had strong confidence with the strength of his physique. Even among the Academy Alliance, only a few could surpass him in terms of physique. Boom! However, his expectations had failed him this time. In that instant, when his sturdy body had clashed with the black figure, his facial expression changed. That flimsy figure was like a wild breast that specialized in strength. That frightening strength heavily impacted against him. With a deep groan, that towering male flew out in a terrible state along the ground, drawing long marks as he spurted blood from his mouth. When those from the Academy Alliance behind him saw this scene, their faces changed as they clearly understood how powerful the physique of that towering male was. However, that towering male had suffered injuries from a single clash. When they were submerged in astonishment, that figure stabilized, revealing Mu Chen's flimsy figure as he looked at the towering male. Although that person's physical body was powerful, it was a pity that he met him. Go together. The towering male quickly barked. He could tell that the youth before him had cultivated his physical body to a frightening extent. Rustle. As he barked, dozens of figures acted at once and headed towards Mu Chen. Seeing the overbearing manner of the other party, Mu Chen's expression turned cold. He inhaled a mouthful of air as black lightning flickered on the surface of his body. Under his muscles, there was thunder that gradually roared. Boom! His foot heavily stomped on the ground as he flew out, into the crowd. His fist whistled, sweeping out a powerful gale, causing the air to explode from his fist. All those that came in contact with his fist had spurted blood as they flew out without exception. Behind him, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian followed. Although their physical bodies weren't as powerful as Mu Chen's, they were still more powerful compared to ordinary experts that had cultivated their physical bodies. Adding onto the Luo God Sword in Luo Li's hands, although they were not able to utilize any spiritual energy in this region, the sharpness of the Luo God Sword wasn't something that could be guarded against with just the physical body alone. Thus, with the three of them entering the fray, despite the fact that the other party had an advantage in numbers, they were losing as they laid on the ground shrieking in pain. In roughly 10 minutes, dozens of experts of the Academy Alliance had already been defeated as they laid on the ground, groaning in pain. It's really a hassle not being able to use spiritual energy. When Qingxian clenched her teeth. If they were outside, those fellows would have fainted with a single palm of hers without being able to get close to her. Mu Chen laughed, and just when he was about to speak, his expression changed as it gradually turned cold. He raised his head. There were figures that slowly walked out not far away. From the looks of it, there were nearly 100 people that surrounded the entire area. Up ahead, Qin Feng slowly walked out with a smile. When he looked at Mu Chen, there were hints of ridicule in his eyes. Under the shadows of the forest, the figures of people appeared one after another like locusts as they walked out of the darkness. Their vicious gazes were fixed onto the three figures before them. When Mu Chen saw the formation before him, even his brows furrowed a little. He never expected that he would be discovered by Qin Feng so quickly. Luo Li and Wen Qingxian moved near Mu Chen as they cast their cold gazes upon Qin Feng. Although the opposite party had the advantage in numbers, it wouldn't be an easy task for the other party to take them down. Ha ha, Mu Chen, there were other paths for you to walk, but you brought yourself upon Hell's Gate. Qin Feng mocked as he cast his ridiculing gaze at Mu Chen. You have thought too highly of yourself. Mu Chen smiled as he swept his gaze around him. Why? You have the confidence now that spiritual energy slumbers in this area? Being so stubborn even at this time. Qin Feng frowned, but at this timing, shouldn't you show a little uneasiness? Mu Chen pondered thoughtfully as he replied, you do not possess these qualifications to make me feel this way. Qin Feng suddenly smiled as he lightly nodded his head shortly after. He lightly waved his palm down and his voice turned endlessly cold. Deal with them. Boom. As he declared, there was a unified shout from nearly 100 people from the surroundings. A faint luster was emitted from their bodies and flickered on their skin, having a metallic appearance. They emitted a sense of valiant as they charged with heavy steps on the ground. Because of the grandeur in numbers, it seemed as if there were 10,000 stampeding horses, and that put pressure on others. Mu Chen's pupils turned cold at this point in time as he deeply inhaled a mouthful of air. Black lightning flickered on the surface of this body, and shortly after, he stomped on the ground as well. Cracks instantly spread from beneath his feet. Despite the fact that Mu Chen was not able to utilize his spiritual energy, the strength of his physical body was not something that ordinary people could contend against. Shoo! His figure turned into a fuzzy shadow as he charged forward, clashing against the group of people that was charging at his direction. Bang! Mu Chen threw a fist forward as a powerful fist gale tore the sky. It was like an air cannon as it bombarded onto countless people. Deep clashes resounded. The chest of several people sank in a little as they spurted fresh blood while flying away. They had lost their fighting capability in an instant. Bang! Bang! Mu Chen did not wear any expression on his face as his fist whistled through the wind with black lightning shrouding him. A fearsome power followed his fist, and every single time he sent a punch, there were people flying away with blood spurting from their mouths. The current him seemed like a ferocious steel tiger and was unparalleled no matter where he went. Although there were many people surrounding Mu Chen, there wasn't anyone that could get near him. Although those people could be considered to have cultivated in the ways of physical body, they were clearly nothing compared to Mu Chen. Not far away, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian also had light emitted from their bodies. Their skin turned sparkling and translucent, similar to gemstones. Luo Li was wielding her Luo God sword. Although she could not use her spiritual energy, The sharpness of her sword did not allow anyone to approach her. Wen Qingxian, on the other hand, wielded a golden battle spear in her hands. Spear after images flashed as it drew crafty and ferocious angles that created blood holes on the bodies of those that dared to get near her. In the forest that was under the shadows, shrieks constantly resounded and the sounds of fists clashing onto meat made others feel fear to the depths of their hearts. Qin Feng stood outside the battle circle as he watched the three of them that did not show any signs of losing, despite being surrounded by over 100 people. His gaze remained indifferent as he didn't seem to be bothered by the rapid defeat of his side. Indeed formidable. He watched the battle for quite a while before smiling. His line of sight was not on the invincible Mu Chen, but on Wen Qingxian. A blazing heat flashed before his eyes as he muttered, "If I defeat the former number one, perhaps my name will spread throughout the Great Spiritual Academy tournament, right?" Among the three-person, the one that made Qin Feng feel fear was Wen Qingxian. The team that was led by her had firmly occupied the number one spot some time back. No matter how similar powerful teams pursued, it wasn't possible for them to surpass her. Therefore, everyone was clear that Wen Qingxian possessed rather fearsome strength. If he was to encounter her outside, even if Qin Feng had an additional set of guts, he would still not dare to attack Wen Qingxian. However, the current situation wasn't the same. Spiritual energy could not be used in this region and Wen Qingxian's overall strength decreased by nearly 90%. The current her was her weakest moment. Thinking how the formal number one would fall by his hand, Qin Feng's eyes turned even more blazing. He stepped forward and with a tap of his feet, his figure was like a great rock as he flew across numerous people and appeared above Wen Qingxian before sending a palm down. HMPH. At the sight of the situation, Wen Qingxian coldly snorted. Her jade-like hands trembled as the golden war spear in her hands drew a light image and shot towards Qin Feng like lightning. Haha. At the sight of Wen Qingxian's actions, a peculiar smile was hung on his lips. He changed his palm to fingers as he bent both his fingers. The boundless spiritual energy was like a tidal wave as it exploded. Qin Feng was actually able to use spiritual energy here. Wen Qingxian's face drastically changed at the sight of it. Ding! A metallic clash resounded. Qin Feng's finger gale that contained his boundless spiritual energy withstood the spear tip of Wen Qingxian's spear. At the same time, the fearsome gale had sent Wen Qingxian back dozens of steps. A faint paleness surfaced on her absolutely beautiful face. "Ha ha, now do you know why are we so confident? It's because we can still use our spiritual energy here. What can the current you be considered as in our eyes?" Qin Feng laughed towards the sky as he stood on the air. Boundless spiritual energy swept out with him as the center. Wen Qingxian clenched her teeth as her face was filled with frost. She was actually wounded by Qin Feng. How could the prideful her endure such embarrassment? Even without the aid of spiritual energy, you're still a trash in my eyes. Wen Qingxian coldly smiled as her voice became filled with disdain. Really? A chill flashed across Qin Feng's eyes and with a flicker of his figure, he had disappeared from his original position. Wen Qingxian clenched her teeth as she retreated, tightly gripping onto her long spear. In the next instant, after images of a spear pierced out, it was like a torrential rain that she unleashed in her surroundings. Ding! 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 Metallic clashes constantly resounded as sparks flew. Even the space exploded from the collision. Following every single clash, Wen Qingxian's figure would slightly tremble. She was prideful of her cultivation in spiritual energy. The instant her spiritual energy was removed, her strength would fall to the bottom. Clearly, the current her was being suppressed by Qin Feng. Seeing as Wen Qingxian constantly moved back from their clashes, the fire in Qin Feng's eyes blazed even further. He laughed as his attacks became even more rampant. Ding! The gale on his finger that contained Qin Feng's boundless spiritual energy heavily tapped against the spear tip along with a mountain of strength. The impact surged forth and Wen Qingxian's figure trembled as her rosy lips seemed to have turned a little blood red. Ha ha! Qin Feng frantically laughed. He did not let Wen Qingxian catch her breath as the light on his fingers became even more brilliant that even the wind had formed shapes of his finger. Hurricane Finger. His toe tapped onto the ground as he rapidly appeared behind Wen Qingxian, along with the hurricane-formed finger, and pointed towards Wen Qingxuan's back. Wen Qingxian tightly gritted her teeth as a smear of chill flashed across her phoenix-like eyes. Her jade-like hands formed bizarre seals. However, just when she was about to use the seals, she felt her body tremble, as if there was a figure that appeared behind her. A familiar scent traveled over. It was Mu Chen. Mu Chen's arm embraced her fine waist as he tightly took her into his arms. With this sudden change of events, Wen Qingxian was startled. Shortly after, she ruthlessly raised her elbow in reflex towards Mu Chen's chest. A groan sounded by her ears as the two of them were sent flying away by a huge force. When they fell onto the ground, Mu Chen slightly adjusted and his body heavily landed onto the ground, while Wen Qingxian fell onto him without a single injury. "What are you doing?" Wen Qingxian quickly struggled free from Mu Chen's arm as she said with anger. "You're too heavy with your hands." Mu Chen rubbed his chest as he bitterly smiled. Thereafter, he glanced towards Qin Feng, who had boundless spiritual energy circulating around him. As his gaze turned cold, "Let me deal with him. I can deal with him myself." Wen Qingxian shot Mu Chen a furious glance. Clearly, she was still angry that Mu Chen actually dared to embrace her. Mu Chen, however, did not pay any attention to her. He extended his arm out to obstruct her before taking a step forth. Seeing as Mu Chen did not bother about her, Wen Qingxuan's brows were raised. However, when she looked at Mu Chen's back figure, she was startled as there was a huge patch of blood on his back. "That's..." Wen Qingxian shifted her gaze towards Qin Feng and noticed that there was fresh blood dripping from the latter's fingers. However, from his facial expression, it was clearly not his own. Earlier on, when Mu Chen hugged her, he had blocked that attack for her. Unknowingly, the rage in Wen Qingxuan's heart gradually simmered down. When she glanced towards Mu Chen's back that was dyed in red, her mouth moved. "You. Rest assured, my skin is thick, this is nothing." Mu Chen knew that she had already discovered his injuries. However, he waved his hand. "Leave him to me, you go help Luo Li." When Qingxian looked at the youth's calm expression. However, she felt killing intent and rage underneath his calm demeanor. She bit her lips as she nodded in rare obedience. A faint smile hung on Qin Feng's face as he looked at Mu Chen, who shielded Wen Qingxian from behind. Shortly after, he raised his fingers that was drenched in blood and lightly wiped. A hero saving the beauty? How cliché. Only after the hero saves the beauty and defeats the villain can it be finished. Mu Chen smiled in reply. "Just you?" Qin Feng mocked. He clenched his fist as boundless spiritual energy became like gale as it whistled around him. If he was outside this region, perhaps his strength would not be considered very powerful. However, inside this region, where spiritual energy was sealed, it was heavens-defying. Mu Chen stared at the majestic spiritual energy that surged around Qin Feng's surroundings. His eyes lightly narrowed. No wonder Qin Feng dared to come obstruct them all by himself, so he had such a trump card. "You must have used some methods to negate the disruption of this sealing spiritual array, right?" Mu Chen slowly said as he continued, "However, your methods would not negate it entirely. Therefore, a majority of your spiritual energy is sealed as well, enabling you to unleash your true strength. Your eyesight is pretty good." Qin Feng smiled as he nodded. "However, with just this amount of spiritual energy, it is sufficient to deal with you three." Mu Chen faintly smiled as a smear of a chill flashed across his pupils. "It seems that you don't believe." Qin Feng smiled. Shortly after, the spiritual energy ripples around him became even more rampant, as if there was wind howling along them. His feet stomped forth as the rampant gale swept forward. His figure had appeared behind Mu Chen, as if he was a ghost. The hurricane fingers flickered with sharp luster as it shot forth towards Mu Chen's back. "See lack." Black lightning surged forth from Mu Chen's body at this instant as he threw a punch out in response, clashing together with Qin Feng's hurricane fingers. Boom! A deep clashing sound resonated as a powerful gale swept out, tearing cracks on the ground. Mu Chen's figure trembled as he was forced dozens of steps back. At the same time, Qin Feng also took several steps back. No wonder you are so confident, so you possessed such a powerful physical body. Qin Feng was a little startled as he looked at Mu Chen. From their earlier clash, Mu Chen actually used his powerful physique to withstand his attack. Even when Qin Xian was using her war spear, she was in a disadvantage when she fought with him. Clearly, Mu Chen's physical body had been strengthened to a certain extent. Although Qin Feng had also cultivated in the ways of physique, he knew that he was inferior compared to Mu Chen in that aspect. However, it's a pity as even a body-refining deity-tier spiritual art required the support of spiritual energy to use. Right now, Mu Chen could not use the full strength of his refined body and could only rely on the pure strength of his physical body to fight. A pretty decent target. Let me have some fun before you die. A sinister light flashed across Qin Feng's eyes as the smile on his lips also became savage. With Mu Chen unable to use spiritual energy, not only would his strength fall, even his agility would likewise fall. Therefore, the instant Qin Feng used any agility-based techniques, Mu Chen would not be able to touch him. Right now, wasn't Mu Chen a meat target that had no ways to dodge in his eyes? Shoo! Qin Feng smiled as his feet tapped on the ground. A hurricane was formed beneath his feet as he turned into a streak of light as he rotated around Mu Chen at lightning speed. Omen. OMN. It was as if Qin Feng had turned into a tornado as he twisted around Mu Chen. The hurricane caused cracks and marks to be left on the ground. Mu Chen's body did not move as he looked at the surrounding hurricane. Vaguely, he could sense Qin Feng's location. However, he understood the fact that he could not catch up to Qin Feng in his current state, which implied that the latter could attack him anytime he wished and he had no way of retaliating. Shoo! A whirlwind along with sharp spiritual energy shot out from the tornado as he flashed across Mu Chen's back. Instantly, Mu Chen's clothes were torn apart, leaving behind a trace of fresh blood. Mu Chen's expression did not change. However, the muscles twitched, implying the intense pain that was brought to him by the wound. Ha ha! Within the tornado, Qin Feng's laughter thundered as it contained mockery and complacency in his tone. His opponent that he felt was thorny earlier on was like a catfish that was laid on the chopping board, allowing him to slaughter as he wished. The sensation was simply too marvelous. Shoo! Shahoo! Thereafter, Qin Feng unleashed his ruthless attacks as spiritual energy swept past one after another, cutting Mu Chen's body up. However, he seemed to be enjoying the joy that it brought him as he did not attack any of Mu Chen's fatal points. As the wind swept past, Mu Chen was covered in wounds as fresh blood dripped. However, he did not suffer any fatal injuries. Mu Chen appeared to be in a very miserable state. Despite so, Mu Chen still did not move. Not too far away, Luo Li and Wen Qingxian had gathered together. When the two of them attacked, no one in the surroundings could get close to the two of them. When they heard the peculiar movements, they directed their charming eyes over to the direction of the commotion, causing their faces to change the instant the scene caught their eyes. Within the tornado, Mu Chen did not make any movements as blood flowed down from his body, making him appear in a miserable state. Luo Li tightly clenched onto her Luo God sword as veins appeared on her arm. That bastard! When Qin Guan gritted her teeth as rage surged in her eyes. She suddenly tightened her grip on her long spear as she made peculiar seals. Her tone was frost-cold. I'll go and kill him. Luo Li suddenly grabbed onto Wen Qingxuan's hand as she obstructed her from doing so as she shook her head towards the latter. Leave it to him. But he could not use any spiritual energy, thus he is not Qin Feng's equal. We have miscalculated. Not only did they have the advantage in numbers, Qin Feng could even use spiritual energy in this region. Wen Qingxian said solemnly. Qin Feng still is not qualified to defeat him, even if he does not have any spiritual energy. Luo Li said slowly and within her gentle tone, it was filled with confidence for Mu Chen. Although she felt throbbing pain in her heart at the sight of Mu Chen's current state and was itching to slaughter Qin Feng, Mu Chen was a prideful person that did not like others barging into his matters. Hearing Luo Li's confidence for Mu Chen, Wen Qingxian was slightly startled. Shortly after, she saw that the slender figure that was covered in fresh blood still stood towering like a spear. He seemed like a mountain that would not fall. She bit on her lips as she turned her head away. When Qin Xuan's figure charged towards the party of the Academy Alliance. Her face was covered in killing intent as her figure emitted a glittering luster. Her war spear drew after images as she knocked them back, one after another. She was venting her anger on those unlucky fellows. Over on Mu Chen's side, the whirlwind became faster and faster as it caused the wounds on his body to become even more dense. How dull. Forget it, let's not waste any more time. When Qin Feng saw that Mu Chen did not struggle or retaliate, he became bored. Shortly after, his sinister laughter resounded as the hurricane speed became even more rampant. Clearly, he was brewing an attack that could thoroughly wound Mu Chen heavily. Oh no. The hurricane grew even more rampant and, suddenly, the hurricane seemed to have froze as a figure covered in a whirlwind mysteriously flew out towards Mu Chen's rear. Boundless spiritual energy gathered in his hand as it was heavily sent towards Mu Chen's back. Bang! The air exploded at this instant. Qin Feng knew that Mu Chen must have sensed his attack. But even if he sensed it, so what? With the strength of his physical body, it was impossible for him to defend against such an attack. Therefore, everything had ended. A savage smile appeared on Qin Feng's face. However, the smile was only for an instant before it froze. He saw that on Mu Chen's body that was drenched in blood, there was dazzling black lightning flickering as a thunderous roar burst out. The scene before Qin Feng went blurry, and when it focused, Mu Chen's indifferent face appeared before him. Mu Chen raised his fist as black lightning twisted around it. A fearsome power was emitted from the exploding thunder that it even made Qin Feng's pupils shrink from how powerful it was. Too much rubbish from your mouth. However, it was all thanks to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have enough time to gather up all the lightning energy that was dispersed throughout my body. A smear of a smile hung on Mu Chen's indifferent face as it was filled with mockery. So, next. Mu Chen's fist had already flew out as he spoke. Thereafter, it clashed against Qin Feng's palm under the drastic change of expression by Qin Feng. You're finished. Boom. A deep sound resonated as a huge crater appeared beneath their feet. Mu Chen's figure did not move, and on the contrary, the majestic spiritual energy around Qin Feng was instantly shattered. His arm was twisted as it seemed as if the bones in his arm were shattered by Mu Chen's fist. Bang! His body was like a cannonball as he shot away, before heavily landing onto the ground, drawing over 100-meter-long mark on the ground before stopping. The surroundings, which was originally noisy, suddenly turned silent. All those people from the Academy Alliance looked at the current Qin Feng, who was like a dead dog lying on the ground, who was holding the advantage a second ago. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Luo Li lightly smiled as she looked at Wen Qingxian. See, I was not wrong, right? Wen Qingxian looked at Mu Chen, who was covered in blood, as she cast her lips aside. Just when she was about to reply in a mocking tone, seeing the wound that Mu Chen had suffered when he tried to save her earlier on, the words that reached her mouth were swallowed down as she lightly snorted. This episode ends here. Thank you for watching.